The sun had only just risen above the horizon as we joined Ethan to begin a full day of inspecting the trap systems set up around a ranch in eastern Texas. Over the past several weeks, freshly rooted fields, muddy water holes, and damaged fences had become increasingly common signs that wild boars were moving through the property night after night. To reduce the growing damage to the crops, Ethan had installed multiple traps in areas where their activity was recorded most frequently. No one knew what the previous night would bring, but after only our very first stop, we had a feeling this would become one of the most memorable days we had ever experienced. The first trap was positioned right along the edge of the woods, where towering oak trees met a wide grassy field. As soon as we pulled up, even from a considerable distance, we could already tell that the trap door had been triggered and was firmly shut. As we walked closer, everyone was surprised to discover far more wild boars inside than anyone had expected. Dense footprints covering the soft ground revealed that an entire sounder had passed through the area during the night, with most of them entering the trap before the gate closed behind them. Ethan smiled with obvious relief. Days of studying their travel routes and adjusting the trap's location had finally paid off. After completing the ranch's standard management procedures, we quickly packed up and headed toward the next location. The second trap stood in the middle of an open clearing that had been completely torn apart by wild boars only a few days earlier. At first, Ethan had been uncertain about placing a trap there because the area offered almost no natural cover. However, the fresh signs showed that this was one of the routes the animals crossed most often. When we arrived, the sight before us caught everyone by surprise. The trap had captured a much larger group of wild boars than anyone had anticipated. They constantly moved around inside the enclosure, their grunts echoing across the otherwise quiet clearing. It became clear that this seemingly exposed location sat directly on one of the herd's regular travel corridors. After finishing the work there, Ethan marked the site on his map as another location that deserved continued monitoring in the weeks ahead. Our third stop lay deeper inside the forest, where sunlight barely filtered through the thick canopy overhead. This trap had already been triggered the previous day, but because the areas closer to the ranch required immediate attention first, we could not return until later in the afternoon. As we approached, we could already hear movement coming from inside. The wild boars remained remarkably active despite having spent many hours inside the enclosure, constantly shifting about as soon as they noticed our presence. It was a reassuring sign that the trapping mechanism had continued operating exactly as intended throughout the entire period. After documenting the condition of the trap and completing the necessary management procedures, we continued toward the next inspection site as the afternoon sunlight gradually softened. The afternoon slowly gave way to soft orange colors spreading across the Texas sky. The sunlight was fading as we arrived at the fourth trap, positioned beside a dirt road leading toward the grazing pastures. The atmosphere was much quieter than it had been that morning. Only insects and the gentle wind moving through the trees could be heard. The trap remained securely closed with another group of wild boars still inside. Ethan took the opportunity to inspect every part of the system, checking the locking mechanism, hinges, and heavy steel frame to make sure nothing had been damaged after repeated use. Everything continued working exactly as designed, allowing us to finish our work smoothly before darkness settled over the ranch. Sunset arrived quickly. By the time only the last streaks of light remained in the sky, we reached the fifth trap near a small watering hole. Ethan had installed this one only recently, so he was careful not to expect too much. The result, however, exceeded every expectation. Inside was a group of wild boars of various sizes, showing that an entire sounder had passed through the area during the previous night. Fresh tracks surrounding the water confirmed that this had become one of their regular travel routes. Ethan could not hide his satisfaction as yet another newly established trap proved its effectiveness, helping reduce the pressure on the nearby farmland. Night had fallen completely as we made our way toward the final trap. The sky above was filled with stars, while the forest ahead had disappeared into almost complete darkness. Watching the remote monitoring screen, Ethan noticed a group of wild boars slowly entering the trapping area. We decided to remain at a safe distance and observe. Only a few minutes later, the automatic gate activated at exactly the right moment. Focused on reaching the trap as quickly as possible to document the results, I accidentally tripped over a mound of dirt, sending the camera in my hands crashing hard onto the ground. The screen immediately went black. After several attempts to turn it back on, we had no choice but to accept that the camera had been damaged beyond use and that filming could not continue. Fortunately, I had managed to take a few photographs beforehand, but the most important moments of the entire trip had been lost forever. Even so, everyone smiled as we made our way back. After spending an entire day inspecting traps from sunrise until well after nightfall, the trapping system had produced many encouraging results for managing wild boar populations around the ranch. And sometimes, it is the unexpected mishaps, like a broken camera, that become the stories remembered long after every other detail of the journey has faded. The first trap was placed in a large pasture on the edge of the forest. When we arrived to inspect it the following morning, the result before us was more surprising than expected. The trap had performed exceptionally well, holding a large number of wild boars inside. After days of monitoring and preparation, this was exactly the outcome we were waiting for. The team quickly began collecting the results before moving on to the next location. But there was a problem. The second trap presented a completely different situation. As soon as we approached, the wild boars inside immediately became agitated and repeatedly charged into the fencing. The situation was quickly brought under control to ensure safety before the collection process could begin. Once everything was completed, we continued on to the next trap. But things were far from over. In fact, they became even more intense. At the next trap, several wild boars continuously attempted to escape the enclosure. With their large size and considerable strength, they forced us to address the situation immediately. Once the area had been safely secured, the collection process continued much more smoothly. Learning from the previous locations, we decided to take a more proactive approach. As soon as we noticed signs that the group was becoming difficult to manage, the team quickly implemented the necessary measures to ensure the safety of the operation. As a result, the collection process at this location was completed much faster and more efficiently than expected. By the time we reached the final trap, the sun had already begun to sink toward the horizon. After a long day of inspecting multiple locations, everyone could feel the fatigue setting in. Even so, the last trap still delivered positive results. After inspecting the site and bringing the situation under control, we proceeded to collect all of the wild boars inside, bringing an effective day of work to a close. With the final task completed, today's trap inspection operation officially came to an end. The results showed that the wild boar population in the area remains extremely high, while also reminding us that protecting crops and farmland is still a long-term responsibility. Every successful operation helps reduce damage to local farms and gives farmers a better chance of protecting the fruits of their labor from wild boar intrusion. As evening approached, while the sunlight was still strong enough, we began building the trap. Heavy steel mesh panels were carried out and assembled into a tightly sealed circle. Each joint was tightened carefully and driven deep into the dry ground. The sound of hammers striking metal echoed sharply through the quiet air. From the outside, it looked like nothing more than a cold iron frame. But in reality, it was a giant lock waiting for the right moment to close. Once the trap enclosure was secured, we installed infrared cameras around the area, mounting them high on tree trunks to monitor the entire trail leading inside. Everything was done quickly and carefully. We minimized human traces and left early so that our scent could fade away in the wind. The final step was baiting the trap. Bags of corn were opened, their sweet scent drifting through the late afternoon air. We scattered the corn to create a faint trail leading gradually toward the center of the trap. The middle was where the bait was placed the heaviest. Step by step, the herd would be drawn deeper inside without realizing it. When everything was finished, the trap area fell silent again. Only the faint smell of corn lingered around, and somewhere in the forest, sensitive noses had already begun to catch the scent. When night fell, the forest seemed perfectly still, but none of us truly felt at ease. Then suddenly, movement appeared on the screen. The wild boars had arrived. The large lead so stepped forward first, sniffing the air as she followed the scent of corn. One by one, big and small, the rest of the herd slowly moved toward the trap. Wild boars possess powerful survival instincts and sharp awareness of their surroundings. But tonight, hunger and the sweet smell of corn outweighed any danger they might have sensed. Guided by the leader, the others followed behind. Without suspicion, without hesitation, they rushed in to enjoy the food. When we were certain the entire herd was inside the trap, suddenly, bang, the final watcher triggered the drop gate. The sharp crash of steel echoed across the forest. In that instant, the quiet woods exploded into chaos. The wild boars panicked, charging in every direction, slamming into the steel fencing, colliding with one another as they tried desperately to escape. The ground was torn apart beneath their powerful hooks. The mesh walls shook violently. The strongest boars attempted to ram the fencing with brute force, but it was all useless against the sturdy, carefully designed steel enclosure. The elasticity of the mesh pushed the powerful animals back each time they lunged. Some of the smaller boars tried to climb or leap over the barrier, but the height of the fence stopped them every time. Panic spread through the herd as they realized that they were completely trapped inside a steel prison. In that moment, no one in our group dared to breathe too loudly. Everyone understood. This was a confrontation between the wild survival instincts of the boars and a plan carefully designed by humans. Before dawn broke, we approached the trap. The boars were no longer thrashing wildly as they had during the night. Many were exhausted, breathing heavily. Some stood quietly, their legs heavy with fatigue. Yet their instincts still pushed them to run whenever they sensed movement. Seeing the herd of more than 20 boars captured at once, the farmers finally let out a sigh of relief. Before opening the trap, the team checked every lock and joint again to make sure the structure remained secure. They carefully observed the animals to ensure the herd would not erupt into panic again. Each boar was restrained, following proper safety procedures. Specialized tools were used to prevent injuries, both for the people involved and for nearby livestock. The wild boars were then loaded onto trucks for further handling. Part of the harvest would be shared among the community according to prior agreement. The rest would be processed according to local regulations, ensuring disease control and environmental safety. After everything was finished, the surrounding area was checked one final time. The forest was returned to the quiet state it had before. And when everything was over, everyone understood that the success of the night did not come from luck or individual strength. It came from choosing the right plan from the very beginning. A large net trap, placed in the right location and strong enough to hold an entire herd, prevented the need for countless scatter traps, the kind that only lead to repeated failure. No one forgot that deeper in the forest, there were still other wild boars. But the events of that night had proven something important. When people stand together and choose the right solution, they can protect their crops, reduce damage, and keep the community safe.